check. I'm refreshing the page on YouTube. It says waiting for Codecademy. Does anybody see the stream is working?
It should be live.
Okay, I see it live now. Great. Well, welcome everybody. We are live on YouTube from all over the world. We are hosting today the Women in Tech panel for June 2021, and I'm here with our panelists. I would love if everybody can go around the room introducing themselves and giving me just like a 2-line background on who you are and what you do.
Sure, I'll start. I'm Marielle. I'm a senior curriculum developer at Codecademy. I've developed content across the Codecademy platform and more recently focused on data science curriculum and business solutions.
I can go next. Hello all, I'm Calla Foyt. I'm a senior DevOps engineer at Codecademy. And I focus on monitoring, infrastructure, continuous integration, continuous deployment, all the fun things that go on in the background of a production website.
I can go. I'm Shirley. I am a software engineer at Codecademy. I work a lot in the front end, mostly on the core learning experience of Codecademy. So if you've ever taken a course there, that's my domain. And I'm a bootcamp grad, and I used to be a fashion designer.
I can go. I, like Marielle, I'm also on the curriculum team at Codecademy and also work on data science and data engineering content. So we work together a bunch. And before Codecademy, I was a teacher, a math teacher, and then also worked in like biostatistics. So.
I'm Julia. I work at a software startup in Detroit called Autobooks. I used to be an accountant. Part of Autobooks offerings includes accounting software. So now I work on a development team for accounting software.
Hi everyone, my name is Mackenzie Patel. I am also an accountant, but for Honeywell Aerospace, and I'm currently the chapter leader for the Phoenix Crypto Codecademy chapter.
Hi everyone, my name is Negar. I'm based in Georgia and actually lead the AI and machine learning chapter in Georgia in Tbilisi. I'm also a founder and CTO of my own startup, which is called Elara Tech, and I do AI stuff there as well.
I'm Sanam, and I'm a software engineer at Codecademy. I also work mostly on the front end, and I work on features that keep our learners engaged. I'd say my background is part formal education, part self-taught. I did a minor in computer science, and then everything else sort of have learned on my multiple engineering jobs.
All right. Well, thank you really for going around. I think we got everybody. Yeah. So the format of this panel is very simple. I was hoping that both our panelists from Codecademy and the panelists that come from the community will have some questions on their own, some topics they want to discuss. So I hope that my job, it will just be to pass the mic from person to person and be in the background learning with everybody else in the audience. And I would love to get started with an icebreaker. So I think I would, my first question to you would be, why did you think that participating in this panel was a great idea? And who do you think that this panel is going to be benefiting the most? And why should everybody, in my opinion, be attending this panel and listen to you?
I know that I heard as the marketing materials were going out for this event, I heard from some people in the community who I'm familiar with, including a lot of men in the Codecademy community. So I think it's great that they are deciding to take time out of their day and listen to the stories of women in the community. And I think it will also really benefit women like me and Mackenzie and Shirley, for example, who have all transition careers or planning to transition careers, or are not doing what their educational background is in as part of a technical role, since so many women miss those opportunities while they're young and in school.
Yeah, I think to add to that too, it's I think especially when you're sort of on that path and you're learning, it can be hard if you don't have a network of people already in the industry who you can ask questions to and like sort of learn about their experiences. So I think it's really valuable to just get people, women especially, who are in the industry and just hear their stories and hear their experiences.
Somebody else that wants to join in? I'm sure that you all have some opinion on why this is an important conversation to have. I think it's an extremely important conversation to have. That's why I wanted to start with this one.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Sophie. I mean, big +1 to what everyone else has already said, but I would go as far as to say, like, this is valuable for everyone to hear, not just women, right? Because if there are issues that still need addressing, which there certainly are, awareness of them is that first step towards resolving them. So it's a great learning opportunity for people both in and out of tech, women, men, everyone.
Yeah. And I was just going to add, I think there are a lot of different jobs in tech that people aren't aware of. And so just being able to see people's different paths, see people's different jobs and learn about them creates a picture for like what you could do, and maybe provides direction towards building towards a goal that you didn't even know you had. So I think it's just useful to see people, learn about their work, learn about their experiences, and then maybe you can build your own experience off that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this panel is just going to be very inspiring. So I'm personally super excited for it, especially, if you're still in college or a new grad, and you're not quite sure what you want to do after you graduate or with your career. I think I'm just really excited to see, again, as Sophie said, like everyone's path and, what you could potentially do with your career.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's a good balance between, it's not just a women in tech panel, it's also just a tech panel. And we have to be aware of both, that we want to spread awareness and we want to talk about the difficult topics. But at the end of the day, when you see other people that are doing the things that you would wish you were doing, it's really inspiring. You say, okay, well, if they did it, I can probably do it too, right? So I would love to know, in our Codecademy side, who has the first question that they would like to cover today, or the first point of debate? I would love to hear.
I can start off. Just curious, anybody here has had any experience on if you've been on Reddit or Stack Overflow or some other kind of online community speaking about tech, working with others, if you've ever felt the need to change your profile or alter it in some way so that you don't appear to the general public as a woman.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I went back and forth even when creating my Stack Overflow profile, whether to use my name, whether to use an image, whether to include anything that would vaguely relate to gender specifically for that reason. And I kind of decided it was more important to me that there was visibility. So I went forward with my name.
That's brave.
I can piggyback on that. I'm not very involved in different communities like Stack Overflow and Reddit and things like that people in tech are. But for me, I have an ethnically ambiguous name. And so I actually once joined a community for professional development for women and was messaged by the founder and asked if I was a woman because of my name. So I think that's something that can happen to people based off of their gender, but also just unfamiliar names as well. So I think that's something that we can all also be aware of.
Yeah, I've definitely had to make adjustments in the past. I'm a pretty active Redditor and I use Discord very actively as well. I find myself on Reddit often having to change the way that I write, change my voice so I don't come across as overly feminine just because of the responses that, that's gotten in the past. And on Discord, I've had to change my profile picture multiple times because I was just getting unwarranted DMs about my appearance, which is delightful always.
Yeah, that's what inspired that question for me, was having to change my Discord profile image because of just the number of unwanted DMs.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate state of things of the internet, I suppose.
I think that you bring up a really good point. You know, when I first heard about the profiles problem and how women have to change their profiles and protect their identities online, at first, my first gut reaction, like I was think a lot of guys had that reaction, is like, well, it can't be that bad. Or like, come on, it's probably just like one or two. And then you start thinking about it and you realize it only takes one to ruin your day. Imagine if you were getting multiple every day. Or like, so I think it's important for everybody to take a step back sometimes when they hear these things and these problems and realize that one, it can be too many already if it happens once. And it's not happening once, it's happening all the time. So I think this is like one of those instances that really brings you, so like gets you to the door of like, oh, this is an issue. And then you start digging through, right? And you realize that there's a whole host of issues. This is not a single incident. This is not like a one-off that happens online. Then you start finding out that there's an entire list of unending problems that you have to tackle and you have to deal with. So I would love to hear if there's any more of these instances or examples you can bring up, that would be great too.
Yeah, I actually have an example of this. And I think there's a problem with like multiple different people or instances of that, but also I think multiple platforms. Like I had this one particular spammer or like troll person that was just following me across several different platforms, just pretty much harassing me from like Instagram to Twitter to even Goodreads. And I was like, really, on Goodreads? So yeah, I think it's definitely like someone can start trolling you on one platform, but it doesn't just end there. Like you can keep blocking them on everything, but you don't really realize how long your internet trail is. So you just be really careful because some people are just really tenacious about just like following you and yeah, just causing harm.
That's really unfortunate. Does anybody else have something to add to that? No, we can move on. It's fine. I actually saw this. Have you ever blocked somebody on Instagram and it asks you if you want them to block not just that account, but if they create any accounts in the future?
Yes.
Like imagine having to build a feature in a social platform where if you have to block a user because they are harassing you, they said somebody thought, you know what, we should not just block this user, we should block all the future accounts because we know they're going to do it again and again. Like, yeah, it can get really bad. Good, let's try to move on to maybe some happier pastures here. Do we have any questions or topics that you want to cover from some other panelists? I would love to hear our second topic.
Yeah, I had a more positive or upbeat question. So I guess in what ways, in what ways do you think working in tech as a woman has actually improved, maybe since when you started, and some examples would also be great.
The floor is open. Whoever wants to take that question first, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think as we're seeing more and more women in tech, the general like awareness of maybe like microaggressions, right, of these pre-existing issues in the tech culture, like people just have become more aware of them. And because of that, like I mentioned earlier, like awareness of an issue is your first step towards addressing it. Like I've been in tech for, oh my gosh, 8 years. It's always fun to realize just how long it's been. And I think when I started, there wasn't much in the way of like training on microaggressions or on how to interact with people, which sounds silly. Like you wouldn't think that you need to train people on that. But as awareness increased, the recognition that trainings like that did need to exist increased. And so now I think every company I've been at in the last few years has had some sort of training about what microaggressions are, how to avoid them, how to deal with them when you encounter them. So I think there have definitely been some major strides in improvement.
I'm just going to add that I'm just speaking from my own experience. When I was like 18 and I just like was in university, I was the only girl in my batch. There were like 10 guys and only me. And I was really intimidated. But then the head of our department is a woman. And then she really inspired me to be, like, okay, there are men there. So what? I can stand out. And it actually worked. And she's done it for multiple people as far as I know. And yeah, I think that's a plus.
I also have been in tech for like about 6 years. To piggyback on what Cal said, I think there are a lot at every job that I've like switched into, there have been sort of more women. And I think as the tech industry as a whole has become more open to like non-traditional backgrounds and pathways into tech, like that has benefited a lot of folks who maybe like growing up were excluded from, you know, being talked about as like going into tech. Like math and engineering were so kind of male dominated and always portrayed as very male dominated. And I think like the fact that there are so many different resources to learn, and that, you know, now it's very like public that you don't need like a computer science degree to work at a lot of the larger tech companies. Like I think that that has helped just diversify the field overall. And I think in terms of just culturally and politically, we're in a moment where people are more open and more like aware that they could have implicit bias and unconscious bias. And so I think that all of that kind of that awareness also sort of helps, that it's not necessarily that you meant to discriminate, but you know, we all kind of grew up in this society that's shifting and now we're talking about it more. And I think that that helps.
I think it goes. Oh, sorry, Mario. I just stepped on top of you. Sorry. I was going to say that reminds me a little bit of the culture of sports a bit. Like if you are playing a sport and your coach tells you, hey, you're doing something wrong. Like if you're playing tennis and you're swinging wrong the racket, somebody's going to coach you and tells you. And everybody accepts that that's what happens. You're trying to get better. So you get coached and you improve. You don't just look at your trainer and say, well, you know, there's no problems here. I'm just going to keep doing it. And I think it kind of mirrors a little bit what you were talking about. Like if we realize that we have these biases and there's these problems to work on, we should have the mentality of like, oh, well, I'm just going to learn, I'm going to grow, and I'm going to get better. I'm just going to improve and move on to another place that is better for everybody, not have this sort of like forceful mentality of like, well, there's no problems here. We never had a problem. And like, I don't need to change. Like, it's very interesting because in some things like a sports, you will never see somebody watching their team and saying, well, they're perfect, they should never change ever. Like they're always like, they need to train more, they need to practice more. Like, why don't we have that mentality with issues like this too, where it's all about learning and getting better at these issues that sometimes, to be fair, they've never been covered for decades. So to be fair to everybody, it's like, yeah, okay, you didn't know, great, but we're going to get to a place that is better now. And that's, I think that mentality of growth and improvement is what's really going to drive us to a better place. You know, like everybody's being willing to be part of the conversation and learn. What do you think? Does everybody think?
I was just gonna say, I think I got into tech. So I got into tech maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think at a point when a lot of women were really just starting to get into the field more. And so I started out with a lot of peers who were really new to everything. But one thing that I've noticed is that there have been an increasing number of women in more senior positions over the past few years. And I think that that makes for an easier situation because you start to see the pathways forward as you're gaining your start. I know that there's an engineer at Codecademy who was particularly inspiring to me as I was getting started at Codecademy. And having her there, I think just made it easier for me to feel like I can do this. You know, this is a place where I belong.
You know, you're gonna force me to unmute you if I don't see people starting to jump in. I want everyone to participate in these conversations. Don't make me unmute you.
Actually, I had another question that Mariel really reminded me of. You mentioned that there was a woman at Codecademy who you looked up to, and I have something similar where I work. There's a woman who is like, you know, she definitely like knows her stuff really well. Like she's definitely one of the top like knowledge people. Sorry, the words aren't working, but you know, she's one of the smartest people I have ever worked with. And she's been a huge role model to me in like acquiring technical skills. So just wondering for the group, maybe who some of your role models in tech are, who are women.
Pretty similarly, like most of my role models have been people, I guess, within my own realm of existence, you know, not necessarily someone I'm watching from afar, but like my own peers. I find something like there's just something really great about getting to know someone personally and getting to understand their story. And working with them means that you can help to support each other. So all of my role models are like my past peers. So I won't call them out by name. But yeah, I've been really lucky to work with some incredible women over my career. Take inspiration from them.
Yeah, I'm relatively newer to tech. I only started getting into cryptocurrencies less than a year ago, but one of my first on-ramps was this group called SheFi, which is a DeFi educational program for women. And that was sort of one of the first things that got me really interested in crypto. And the woman who runs that, her name is Maggie Love. And she is just so smart about all things crypto and DeFi. And that was just a really big inspiration for me because I don't think her background, I don't think she's a developer, but she is just so inspirational and knowledgeable about this space that I just really look up to her. And I was like, you know what, I can do this too. So that was definitely one of the big influences. And then I'm also part of this other group called She 256. So there's a lot of women in crypto groups that I'm a part of. And it's just really heartening to see that that's there and that it exists and new ones are being started all the time. So I think I just got in a really good time. And yeah, there's a lot of role models in that space.
I want to hear from the people that don't talk at all. Shirley, I'm going to bring you in the spotlight here. Say something.
Thanks for calling.
I want to hear your opinion. Okay.
I think so. I've been in the tech industry for about 3 to 4 years, and when I first started my job, I think my first job, one of the most important things for me was that there was a woman there that I really looked up to, and we became really close. And I think it's, for me and for a lot of people I've talked to who are in the industry, especially women, I think it's really important to have a supportive group of coworkers that you can just relate to, talk about things with. And I think especially when you're entering it and you're new and everything is sort of scary, like it's really valuable to have role models and mentors who have been in the industry that can share their experiences, and you can share your experiences, what you're going through. And I do want to say that I think at Codecademy we have a really great supportive group of engineers, curriculum developers, women in tech, and I think that's really valuable.
Great. Thanks, Shirley. I'll call you out again in like 5 minutes. Don't worry if you don't unmute yourself. I'll keep an eye on you. Okay, so I think Julia and Mackenzie, you both had a chance to ask a question. Negar, do you have a chance to ask your question yet?
Yes, actually. So we just talked about how like being around women in tech is really empowering. And well, maybe some people are like, where do we, find these people? And did you, when you were learning and acquiring your coding skills or whatever, where did you find this woman to connect to, and how can we do it?
Answer that one. So I minored in computer science and math, and then I majored in econ, and I moved back to DC where I'm from, and was sort of like, okay, how do I get a job now with little bits of information in these three different areas? And at the time, and back in 2015, it felt like there was this big push to get women into STEM. And so I kind of just looked into what groups existed. There were a lot of meetups. I joined Women Who Code DC's chapter. And I think more than anything, that community just sort of taught me that, oh, there's so many people getting into tech at all different ages. And I think I felt like I was behind because I didn't major in software engineering. I didn't do an internship in the summer at a tech company. And then there were just so many people who had kind of maybe switched careers and were working in tech at good companies, or, were switching careers later on. So I think on top of being a good place to go and kind of practice your skills and just even hear of what companies were hiring in the area, it helped sort of solidify oh, I can do this. Plenty of people are doing this. Everyone's background is different. So I think that was something that was really helpful for me.
I, similarly to you, Sanam, I was a math major in college. And so I had this kind of technical skill set, or at least mathematical skill set, but that doesn't really translate into tech jobs necessarily. And so my first longer term job was as a math teacher. And I did that for 4 years also in DC. And I had a lot of really amazing, super smart female role models in that job. But I also really saw how there were these really, really smart, technically skilled women who were being paid there was definitely more women than men. Even in the math department, I think we were 10 women and 2 men or something. but really being underpaid in our roles as teachers compared to other men and women with the same skills who are working in tech. And so I ended up taking classes and enrolling in graduate school to learn more technical skills. And I even enrolled in a graduate school program. It's called Applied Statistics for Social Science Research, because I was specifically interested in the social sciences and like education. And I think that also attracted a lot of women. But as we went through the program together and saw how people were graduating and getting these jobs in tech and able to still contribute, for example, to education, like working at Codecademy is such a dream because I get to still work as a teacher, but actually like build more of my technical skills and get paid what I think those technical skills should be paid, which is, a separate problem. Teachers should be paid way, way more. And that's a totally different thing. But I think if you can find things that you're interested in and slowly kind of use that as like a way to kind of wind your way into a tech career, I think you meet a lot of people along the way. I also joined, there's like a Our Ladies group that I joined in New York City and went to some of the talks and like met people and networked through that. And that was another really great community of women.
I also just
did I just step on Marielle again?
I swear, Fede.
What is happening here? We're connected. We're like at a deeper level. Our brains are working at the same level. This is amazing. I love it. All right, Maria, go.
I was just gonna shout out the Code Newbie community, which I think for folks who are especially, I think, interested in web dev, but they have folks across the spectrum of tech. It's a really welcoming community, I think, for people of all genders, but it was started by Saranya Barak, who's just like a phenomenal person. And she's, I think, a great role model for any person getting started in tech, woman or man or any other gender. I would definitely check out the Code Newbie community on Twitter as well.
Thank you for the shout out. Yeah, I was almost going to say the same thing, but not quite. So not only we step on each other, but we say the same things. I wanted to follow up on what Sophie said about role models. And I think what caught my attention was you said you were surprised. You went there, I was like, wow, 10 women and like 2 men. And like, why was that surprising? Why do we have this idea that like, well, it's probably going to be all guys in this room? Like, are those stereotypes, are we imposing that on ourselves, or like is it because we've seen it, like growing up, we've seen like what the people are in the room usually are, and that's what we expect?
I mean, I can speak from personal experience, and I think others in this room have probably had similar experiences. Like, I didn't have a single female math teacher, and I was a math major in college from 9th grade up through college. Not a single female math teacher.
And for those that are not in the US, 9th grade is about what age?
So like 14?
13, 14.
14. Okay. Yeah. So since you're early teens, wow, that's really surprising. I think, what, I'm thinking about it now. And I think for me, my first math teacher that was a female was probably in college, like sophomore year of college is when I finally came across one. So you think, are you all, we have all of you here, so I want to hear everybody's opinion. Is it something that happens a lot, do you feel, in your personal experiences, that you've seen that you expect the room to be male dominated because we've seen it everywhere and it's just sort of like a norm? You don't wish it was there, but it seems to be prevalent everywhere. I know that there's statistics about how many female CEOs we have, how many people and like higher levels of management. But I think there's a difference between reading it in the New York Times, the percentages, and seeing it every day when you go to work, when you go to the doctor, when you go to, like whatever you, I would love to hear your opinions on like how you experience this, day to day or year to year.
I'm just gonna go first. So I grew up in the Middle East. So yeah, I saw that mostly like all teachers would say, oh, you're good at math. That's strange. Like mostly boys like math. So it started from a very young age. And then when we actually like got to choose our major, like yeah, not a lot of females were interested in this. And so in college, you know, when you see, I just said it, like I was the only girl at college. So I feel like it's both, I think it's there. It's not imposed or something.
Yeah, you know, one thing that the human brain is really good at is identifying patterns. It's so good at that it sometimes identifies patterns where there aren't any. In this case, though, I think that's what it is, right? Like you see or are told so many times that this is a men's field, or like this conference is attended mostly by men, and it just becomes something that you expect. I think this is less and less the case these days. You know, like as the importance of like diverse representation is being recognized, but because we've seen these patterns for so long, it's a bit ingrained to have that expectation.
I think it's also pretty industry dependent. So I was thinking about this recently, like the more established industries, like for example, accounting or medicine, I think they have made more strides in terms of equality with women just because they've been around for a little bit longer. Like when I was going through school, like I did have quite a few female accounting professors, and even at my job now, like over half my team is women, and like all the managers in my group are all women. So I think I'm just sort of used to that. But then when I started like getting into crypto and looking at tech, it was just not that way at all. And I think maybe that's because tech is just such a newer industry. Like accounting was a thing in like, you know, the 14th century, whereas tech has just been very recent. So I'm thinking, you know, maybe it's like a time issue is all, but you know, that doesn't mean like we shouldn't wait like 500 years for women to get equality in tech. I think like we should definitely fast forward that a lot. But yeah, I think it's very just like industry dependent.
I also want to add, like, I remember when I was making the switch to tech, or thinking about making the switch, it was definitely something I was thinking about. I was sort of nervous, I think. And I think that and I'm not saying this stereotype is true, but I think that a lot of people have this stereotype of what it is to have a job in tech, which is, you know, you work at a really huge company in the Silicon Valley and you live, breathe, eat tech. And I don't think that's necessarily true. But I also want to call back to what we were talking about before of like, just there are so many spaces in tech, and that is not the entire tech industry, especially as more and more industries like sort of go into tech and need technology, need the internet. I think that there's just so many different aspects of technology that you can be in, and it's not just the one maybe stereotype you have in your head of what a software engineer or what a tech worker is.
I think that's a great point about sort of what we kind of used to maybe assume made like a software developer and what that job would be like. Like I know that I was guilty of kind of just assuming that like to be a software engineer, you had to be good at math. And I've seen some people write about that in the YouTube comments. I was good at math. I was always in like advanced math classes. And I thought, oh, okay, well, there are jobs in tech. Let me do a software engineering minor too, because I'm good at math. And I don't think that you need to be good at math to be like a good software developer. I think we have so many folks here who maybe don't have that much experience with math and CS and are great developers on my team. And I also think that like like the software engineering field in general is just so much more collaborative than I thought. Like you have to have great like, communication skills and collaboration skills. And I think when I used to picture software engineers, I thought of somebody like working in a dark room on their computer like all day, just like having tasks, working on them for like 4 days straight and just like handing them off. And I think like in agile development and kind of at every company that I've worked on, the culture is just so much more kind of working as a team. So I think just these types of panels are helpful to kind of share what it actually is like working as a software developer on a day-to-day basis, because I think more people are interested in working somewhere where you're problem solving, but you're also like sharing and working with others and giving feedback. And, you know, I think also another point, sorry that I'm rambling, was when I was applying to jobs initially, I think there's this big push of like sharing side projects. And I think like that is something that now, like as a company, like we don't ask people to like share their side projects, for example, because like we recognize that not everyone who's a good software developer is programming all the time outside of their job. So I think that that's something that's important for kind of employers to keep in mind as well, that, you know, not everybody is going to have this portfolio that's filled with side projects that they worked on. And when you kind of demand that of people, you're excluding a lot of people, whether it's like parents, whether it's people with kind of non-traditional backgrounds.
I think that's a really good segue. Oh my God, it happened a third time.
It's just like an
Okay,
ongoing
Mariel,
thing, right?
go.
I just wanted to push back against this idea of being good at math, because, and I mean, I'm sure that Sophie has a bunch of feelings about this also, but when I look at someone like, for example, my husband, who did not go super far within math, he never did math in college, but he uses linear algebra in his day-to-day. And he still keeps telling me, like, I'm really bad at math. And I'm like, no, you just think you're bad at math because it was probably taught to you in a way that didn't work for you. But at this point, you know, he has to solve really complicated mathematical things on his day-to-day basis, and he does it well. And I think that that's kind of what you end up doing in the case of a lot of technical careers. You know, it's great if you have that mathematical background, but you just need to be able to problem solve. And a lot of it is just sticking with a problem and working with others, as Sanam pointed out, is one of the things that helps you the most.
I have two quick thoughts. One is that I 100% agree. I thought I was bad at math for like my whole childhood, and it wasn't until I had one really amazing class in college that I realized that I liked it and that I was good at it. And it wasn't, I don't think that it's a good at math, bad at math, like dichotomy at all. I mean, at least in the US, and I'm sure it's true elsewhere, like the education system is not really built in a way that mirrors what the real world looks like. So the way that you learn math when you're in high school is like not really the way that you're going to apply it in a job in the future. And so you're not going to be given like 10 algebraic equations, like asked to solve them, or given a derivative to calculate, or so, I don't know.
Wait,
you're not going to have,
okay.
in real life, you're going to have a problem that you have to solve, and you need to figure out what tools you can use to solve it. And mathematics is really like a toolbox that you can tap into to solve those problems. And the only thing I use very little of what I learned in my formal training in my everyday job. What I use is like the problem solving and the research skills to like figure out which tool to use. But it's not really the same tools that I learned how to use in school. I'll stop there.
Isn't that like a running joke? Like anybody that's gone to college, you always get asked, how much of what you learn in those 4 years and those 6 years you did masters, how much do you actually use in your job? And everybody will say 5% if it gets to that. Like, I don't remember any courses from anywhere before senior year. And if it's been like a while since I graduated, I don't remember anything from all 4 years. Like I couldn't even point in the book where it is. And I think that's a great segue now to talk about, I know we've talked about how tech is not one thing. A lot of people say, I want to get a job in tech. And that sounds like there's like one place, one door, one desk where everybody goes and applies and puts their name. And that's just not true, right? And you're all proof of that. All 8 of you here have different backgrounds, working different, and it's all tech. So because tech is just everywhere now. So I would love to hear from all of you how you see what you do in tech in the greater image of, if you were somebody that is 17, 16, and you're thinking, well, what am I going to do when I'm 18, when I'm an adult? Should I study in college? Should I self-teach myself? Should I go for this part of tech, that part of tech? How would you navigate that maze that it is finding a job in tech, which means a million things, and everybody does it differently? So I would love to hear from our panelists in Codecademy, also from a community panelist. What do you think that is, if you had to explain to somebody that is 15, hey, I'm in high school, how do you navigate this? How do you shop, if you will, for your perfect career in tech? How do you find about this?
I think one of the good things about tech is, like, you know, even if at 15 you have no idea what you want to do, or what you want to do is very different from tech and you land on it later, it's like never too late to go into tech. So if you start with some kind of technical education or none, or you're worried that you're choosing like the wrong skills to learn or something, I think you could just throw that idea out the window, because, you know, you can always learn more skills later. You can learn skills on the job sometimes, like I do. So I think something is like, I think people get really bogged down sometimes in this, like, where do I start? Like, what should I do first? And like, I think the answer is like, what is interesting to you? Like, what sounds like it could be fun, or even if it just sounds like easy to get started, just to get you hooked. I feel like, you know, there's maybe not one correct way to start, but you know, I think online learning like through Codecademy is really great. Or if you have any like local meetups, here in Detroit, we have a code boot camp called Grand Circus that I've done free classes through, where I've gone pre-COVID times like in person and done code workshops and stuff, just so you get like your feet wet with something, meet other people who are interested in it, and just learn what you like before you commit to trying to like learn a skill. That's what I would say.
Okay, I'll go next. So I think I would tell them that it looks nothing like the movies. You're not going to become a hacker at all. But honestly, I think the main question would be, are you good at coding, rather than what should I do with coding? Because I think coding is like, it's fun. I'm not saying it's not fun, but I think it can be really frustrating. And dealing with that frustration, I think is the main key, like if you will become a successful for programmer or not. So I would be like, okay, go learn C, and then if you survive, pursue coding. That's my advice.
Okay, so I think we already have two in the camp of you should get your feet wet and try it out. So test run. I guess that's why you test run your cars, right? The dealership. Okay, so test it out and see if it's for you. And can I get a quick answer here for one question, which is, if you're bad at math, should you run away from tech?
No.
No, no,
No.
no, no,
No.
no. Everybody agrees. Like, that's just blatantly a lie. That when people are like, well, you have to be super skilled at math and physics and whatever, like that's just not true, right? And okay, just wanted to check, just quick quality check here. Okay,
Can I add something? Can I add something?
Go,
Benedict?
please.
I think that, and this is related sort of to the math thing, that like, I think a lot of people think that coding is extremely like analytical, and you have to be like, I don't know, you just have to have like insane technical skills. But I would also push back and say that like, I personally think coding is extremely creative. And like, if you come from a background where you love art, where you love problem solving, if you love anything related to just like being creative and thinking about problems and thinking how to do something, I think like you are extremely prepared to be a coder, and like you could be a really, really great coder even if you're not good at math. And I think that's a common misconception, because I think coding is actually extremely creative. There are so many things you can build with it, so many things you can do with it, and it's like sort of an endless opportunity.
And that's what makes it fun. That's what makes tech fun. That's why people want to work in tech, right?
I'll give the fun story that my mom has her undergraduate degree is in art from RISD. I think like sculpture design or something. And then and she taught art for a number of years in high school. And then she ended up with a PhD in computer science, like writing computer programs. And now she does a lot of like art and computer science work that blends those two fields, and there's so much overlap. But
and probably the issue is also coming from the fact that when we say bad in math, what does that even mean? Like math is not 3 lines. Like, have you seen these books in math? Like, I've looked at math books and they go, it's a lot. Okay. The tech that we build today, it's in a lot of complicated math. Like, what does that even mean? You're bad at math. Why? What type of math? What kind? Like, I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think you should be good at problem solving, and that's why people get confused that they have to like do, calculus while coding. No, you just have to like solve problems and like basic logic. That's it.
Yeah, I thought I was bad at math for the longest time because I couldn't do mental math in my head. Like whenever I was at a restaurant, I just couldn't do the tip of my head, and I just felt so inadequate. But then I realized, wait, I can just have a calculator, and then I was able to do like calculus and like differential equations and all that stuff. So, and I think one other point about tech is that if you want to get into it, you don't have to be a programmer or a developer or anything. Like one thing that I found is that you can do like community in tech, which is why like we're all here today. It's what Fede does. Like a lot of tech companies, like they want to have really strong community leaders just because it makes the community better for either if you're learning or using a product or something. Like you don't have to you can do something non-technical, but still be in a tech company and get that atmosphere and get that drive as well. So yeah, or like finance and accounting, just like different functions. So there's definitely like way more than you can do than just hacking.
More opinions on getting into tech and how to navigate the maze that it is. I think some people in the chat were saying that it might come down to mentorship and connections. Like sometimes if you have somebody that works at tech in some capacity, they will help you. Because I mean, like you here right now, right? I'm asking you these questions. If people around the world had this chance of just being here in this room and say, well, I like computers, I like tech, but I don't know which part I like the most or how to prepare for this. Like, so I feel like mentorship might be a big part of getting into it. Do you agree?
It can be if you have the opportunity. Mentors don't just like grow on trees, unfortunately. But if you know someone who's in tech who you have a good relationship with, then absolutely mentorship can be a great pathway, a great way to navigate the massive and confusing world of tech. And what else did you say? Community?
We were talking about community, yeah.
Yeah. Like I think there's something really valuable in a community, right? Like I'm relatively active in the Codecademy community Discord server. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about being on that server is like watching other people, like non-Codecademy staff, interact with each other and like help each other figure out answers to their questions, whether they be technical or career oriented. Like community can be super valuable and super important in navigating this field, for sure.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of like career counseling at this point. Like, you know how you do career counseling in your last year of high school? Like they tell you, oh, there's all these majors. You could do engineering in 10 different things. Which one fits your profile, right? Kind of there's like 100 million ways of doing tech. Mariel and Sam, do you have anything to add to this?
I think just that, I mean, like I said, the Codecademy community was really important to me as I was getting started. So just to echo again, how incredibly important community can be. And, you know, also obviously mentorship, like you mentioned, and like I mentioned earlier, having a mentor within Codecademy was incredibly valuable. And I think this has been brought up a few times, but just starting with what you're actually interested in and also what your current background is. You know, I kept thinking when I was getting into tech, I was starting from, you know, nothing, but in fact, I had several careers behind me already, and those contributed to the direction that I went in tech. You know, having a master's in education means that I not only know tech coming in after, you know, going through a boot camp, but I could figure out really innovative ways of teaching that tech. And, you know, knowing linguistics and having that background meant that I actually really specifically understood how languages work. So when I came across programming languages, I was like, oh, these are just languages. This is just another type of way of working with, you know, essentially nouns and verbs and adjectives, and all of these components basically work together in the same way. So really start with where you are and your interests. Don't start by saying, okay, well, I'm starting everything completely over. So that's one piece of advice I would definitely put out there.
Another thing I'll add to that with like kind of starting with what you like, for me, a big push of why I got into tech was it felt like every single kind of company and industry, there was going to be like tech jobs in that industry. And so like, I'm someone who's very interested in like education and social impact, and like I do a lot of like refugee related volunteering. And so like in all of those worlds, there was places that like, tech skills are needed. And so I kind of thought more of tech not as like, I'm inherently interested in programming. I'm not. And I feel like I mentioned that all the time at work as like an example that like you don't have to be someone who just like loves to code. but for me, it's like a skill, and I really enjoy the teamwork aspect of it. And so that's kind of like why I'm still here 6 years later. But for me, it's about developing the skill set and experiences that then I can go and use at, like a company or nonprofit that's like doing work that I care about. And so that's part of how I ended up at Codecademy is, we're working to make kind of tech education more accessible. And so it doesn't necessarily just have to be this, like, I'm passionate about programming, so I'm coming into programming.
Okay, so we are at the tail end of this, believe it or not. It's already been a while. I wish we had like a day to talk about this. I feel like we have a lot to share. So I'm going to go through some Q&A, and because we have about 10 minutes left on the event, I'll ask you all to be brief if you want to answer some of these questions. Whoever wants to jump in, feel free. Open mic. One of the questions is, have any of you gone through Codecademy, or do you have degrees? So I guess the question is, are you self-taught, or do you use degrees to get you where you are now?
I started out on Codecademy. Sorry, that was my very beginning. I didn't get a degree in computer science. Like I said, I had a degree in linguistics. I have a degree in education, but I went through the Flatiron School Bootcamp to become a full stack developer.
Okay. Anybody else?
I did the SQL course on Codecademy when I started my job because I had never had any exposure to it. And people were teaching me at work, which was super duper helpful. But when you're learning something in the context of work, sometimes your understanding of it can only be applied to like what you're very actively working on. So reaching for outside resources like that can definitely help to like broaden your knowledge in the way that I would imagine, maybe having a computer science degree would, but definitely glad I didn't get a whole computer science degree.
I feel like tech is self-taught at any level. Like once you get a job, you're gonna have to self-teach yourself. Like if you want to stay relevant, you have to. Can I get a show of hands on how many of you use a formal education degree to get your first job? 1, 2, kind of like 4 of you, ish. Okay, ish. So as you can see in the audience, they're watching live. It seems like there's a lot of your self-driving and self-teaching that you can do, and it's not going to stop you from being in tech. All right, question number 2. Let's go through these. What has changed for you in tech because of the pandemic? Has it been an improvement, stayed about the same, or has it been difficult being in it or getting into tech because of the pandemic? What do you think?
I think the tech industry very easily lends itself to a distributed workforce. So it's not been a big change for me personally. I did change jobs in the middle of the pandemic, which was interesting, doing all of my interviewing over Zoom. But apart from that, I think it's been easy breezy. It's not been terrible at all.
You heard it here first, folks. Easy breezy during the pandemic. Get a job in tech, and the next pandemic will be okay.
Not the pandemic itself, but working in tech during the pandemic.
Okay.
Thank you. I will not minimize the impact of COVID-19.
No, I'm talking about, of course. We're talking about jobs in tech.
Yeah, I just want to add, like, I know like the pandemic was horrible for all of us, but I think it gave us, people in tech, a chance to show how important we are. Like, I feel like maybe some people were kind of disconnected from the whole development of tech, and now they have to use it. So, I think it's better for us. And I want to add, for people with social anxiety, I think has been great to, just get into it.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just to add to that real quick, I think because of the pandemic.
Real quick.
Yeah, real quick. Everything is very simple in terms of like meeting up with new people online. Like before, it might have been conducted in person, but now like I can just message like anyone and be like, hey, we have a quick coffee chat online. And so it's just way easier to network that way, I think.
Great. All right, this question is sort of connected to it, but not quite. They want to know, they're going through a bootcamp and they feel overwhelmed. What advice do you have for someone who, like me, who doesn't have any experience in coding, and how not to let imposter syndrome get to you? And that's the big word, imposter syndrome. A lot of people have it in tech. So for the panelists that have gone through a bootcamp, what do you think of imposter syndrome?
I can answer that. I think that Personally, imposter syndrome is something that is very common and it never goes away. I think I still feel it sometimes. You see people who are well established, and there's always going to be someone better than you at everything in life. But I think to answer the question about like not about going through the boot camp, I think that for me, I think it's really important to remember why you wanted to do this in the first place, and whether that's like taking a step back and just like taking a break from it, or just like doing something that's fun and like reminds you like why you love coding or why you want to become a software engineer. I think that's really important because it's really easy to just get burnt out when you're looking at the same or trying to solve the same, I don't know, like loop problem 5 times a day. So I think it's just important to take a step back and like just remember the big picture here and remember why it's fun, why you love it.
I'll quickly add, I didn't go through a boot camp, but I think that like this feeling of being overwhelmed is really common in tech because there's just so much that you can learn. And so it's really easy to feel like you just don't know enough. But I think one thing that I try to remember is that like everybody everybody is in that same boat. And some people like are better at hiding the fact that they don't know something. And some people are like me, come into the room and are like, I just don't know this. I feel uncomfortable. But if you just keep in mind that like tech is changing so quickly that everybody's going to have to keep learning, and everybody is not going to know the next new thing, then I think maybe that feels a little less overwhelming to try to keep up. I don't know.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat was asking what's imposter syndrome. That's what happens when you just feel like you're not good enough, that you are fake, that maybe you shouldn't be applying for this job. You're not ready for the job. Or like when you're already in the job, you feel like maybe your manager is going to realize that you're not so smart, or like you don't know what you said you knew. And like you just have this anxiety that you're just not good enough for your role. And I think that prevents a lot of people from applying for jobs. A lot of people that are self-taught and they feel like they're not ready to apply for jobs, and they spend a year learning things like so that's what imposter syndrome is about. You can read online more about it. Last question that we're going to cover today: what advice, and I think this goes for the community panelists more, what advice do you give to someone with social anxiety wanting to get involved with the community and learning to code with others?
Yeah, I'll take this one first. You can just don't, I know a lot of our communities like Nagar's and mine, we have Discord communities like specifically for our chapters. So for that, that's a little more anonymous. You don't have to show your face or talk live during meetings. So I think that's been helpful for a lot of people. You can still interact, maybe collaborate on a project, but there's a lot more anonymity that way. And then you can sort of build up from there, maybe like talk during a meeting or something like once you're comfortable.
Negar and Julie, something to add to dealing with social anxiety and participating with others online when you are?
I'll just add that I think it's more common in our community in general, like people who are in tech. So you're not alone. And yeah, as Mackenzie just said, you can just type. No one's gonna force you to like show your face or something like that. You can basically just chat and we'll get to know you that way.
And I would think that if your anxiety is ever about like people being rude to you or judging you or telling you that you don't know enough about something, the great thing about internet communities is you can just block them. So yeah, don't be afraid to do it. If somebody's a jerk to you online, like in like coding communities, just remember that reflects on them entirely and not on you at all.
Thank you. Yeah, I think break that barrier, break the ice, go to an event, see what it's like. Just even if you're just lurking in the back, don't say anything, just see it. And hopefully you can kind of warm up to it slowly. No stress. Okay, so we got about a minute left. We are at the end of the talk. So I'll just give you the floor to you, the panelists. And if you want to make any final remarks, anything you want to say, any encouragement and advice, everybody get in tech, get in there. I know that is very exciting times to be in tech right now. So whatever, the floor is yours.
I can give a piece of advice. I think for once you are in your tech job, in terms of kind of trying to battle imposter syndrome, this is something I've learned from colleagues on my teams, is like they kind of consistently keep track sort of their contributions. So on different projects of like varying things, so that you can kind of go back on that and be like, look, I contributed all these things to the team, because in a particular moment where you're struggling through a problem, you sort of feel like, oh, I can't do this thing. It's supposed to be easy. And so it's nice to be able to kind of step away and be like, wow, well, look at all these great things that I've done. And as you grow more senior in your career, to continue to like make the field more like to improve the culture, then it's like your responsibility kind of to lift up other people from marginalized communities and share their successes and accomplishments.
Anybody that wants to add any final words? Are we good? I think we're pretty good. Thank you, everybody, for joining in the chat. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, don't hold yourselves back from a tech career.
All right. Yeah. Don't hold yourself back.
You can
just
do
go
it.
for it. You can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can do it. Everybody can do it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I hope that our audience online learned a lot. And I really hope to catch you